The sun hung lazily in the sky, casting long shadows across the quiet suburban streets. It was one of those days where nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Birds chirped from the telephone wires. A gentle breeze carried the scent of freshly mowed grass, and the distant hum of traffic blended into the background like a familiar tune. I was on my way home from work, my mind preoccupied with weekend plans, when I saw them. Two men standing beside an unmarked black SUV, their presence immediately out of place in this peaceful neighborhood. At first glance, they looked like officers. Dark uniforms, utility belts, even a hint of that authoritative stance law enforcement tends to have. But something was off. Their posture was too rigid, their expressions too forced. One of them, a tall guy with a square jaw and mirrored sunglasses, kept adjusting his belt like he wasn't used to wearing it. The other, a stockier man with a neatly trimmed beard, scanned the street as if expecting something or someone. Then I saw it. Their badges. They were clipped onto their belts like an afterthought, positioned awkwardly instead of displayed with the usual confidence. The lettering was faint, almost smudged, as if they had been printed and laminated in a hurry. A strange unease crept up my spine. I shook it off. Maybe they were plainclothes officers on an assignment. Or maybe I was just overthinking it. But then, just as I was about to pass them, Squarejaw stepped forward, blocking my path. "Excuse me, sir," he said, his voice smooth but rehearsed. "We need to ask you a few questions." I froze, my heart kicking up a beat. I wasn't in trouble, I hadn't done anything wrong. So why did this feel wrong? The stocky one gave me a thin, almost practiced smile. "Just a routine check," he added. "Routine check? In the middle of a suburban neighborhood?" Something in my gut told me this was the beginning of something much bigger. Hey, real quick, if you're enjoying the video so far, make sure to hit that like button, share it with friends, and subscribe for more awesome content. It really helps out the channel. And while you're at it, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. All right, let's keep going. The moment they stopped me, my instincts screamed that something wasn't right. Up close, their uniforms looked incomplete. The fabric was similar to standard-issue police gear, but there were no name tags, no department insignias, just black shirts, dark cargo pants, and those off-kilter badges that still didn't sit right with me. I forced a casual nod, keeping my expression neutral. "Sure. What's this about?" Squarejaw didn't answer right away. Instead, he exchanged a glance with Stocky, like they were silently coordinating their next move. That glance made my stomach tighten. "Like we said, routine check, Square." Jaw repeated, this time firmer, as if saying it with more authority would make it true. "Routine check? For what?" I scanned the street. No roadblocks, no flashing lights, no other officers. Just these two, standing beside their unmarked SUV. I shifted my weight, acting cooperative but wary. "Which department are you guys with?" Stocky's jaw tensed. "We ask the questions." That was my second red flag. Real officers, at least the ones I'd encountered before, were usually professional, maybe even a little bureaucratic, but never evasive about their credentials. These two? They were deflecting. Hard. I played along, pretending to be unfazed. "All right," I said, fishing my phone out of my pocket. "I'll just call the station and verify." That's when things shifted. Squarejaw took a step closer, his broad frame suddenly more imposing. "There's no need for that," he said, his voice dipping into something darker. "Just answer our questions and we'll be on our way." My grip tightened around my phone. There it was, the moment their act started to crack. A real cop wouldn't care if I called in for verification. In fact, they'd encourage it. But these guys, they wanted control. They needed me to comply without question. Stocky's smile disappeared. His hand hovered near his belt, where a real officer's gun or radio would be. But I noticed something. No radio, no firearm, just a stiff posture, an attempt at intimidation. I took a slow breath, my pulse picking up. "I'd just like to be sure who I'm talking to," I said, keeping my voice even. "You understand, right?" Neither of them responded. For a long, tense second we just stood there. The air felt heavier. The sounds of the street, dogs barking in the distance, a car rolling past. faded into background noise. Then Squarejaw forced a tight smile. "We're wasting time," he said. "You're going to cooperate or we're going to have a problem." And, just like that, I knew. These men weren't cops, and if I wasn't careful, I was about to be in real trouble. The tension thickened like a storm cloud ready to burst. Squarejaw's forced smile had faded, replaced by something colder, something calculated. Stocky's hand still hovered near his belt, not in a way that suggested he was about to draw a weapon, but as if he wanted me to think he could. They wanted control. They weren't getting it. I took a slow, measured breath, forcing my body to stay relaxed, though every nerve in me was on high alert. "Look," I said, keeping my voice calm. "I don't mind answering questions, but if this is official business, I'd feel more comfortable at the station." A beat of silence. Then Squarejaw chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "That won't be necessary," he said. "We're handling this right here." I felt my stomach knot. His words weren't just authoritative, they were final. Stocky took a step closer, his presence crowding my space. "Why are you acting nervous?" he asked, tilting his head. "People who have nothing to hide don't ask so many questions." That was classic intimidation, a tactic meant to flip the script, make me feel guilty for standing my ground. But I wasn't falling for it. I took a careful step back, giving myself just a little more room to move. "I'm not nervous," I said, though my pulse was hammering. "I just know my rights." Squarejaw's eyes flickered with something annoyance. Amusement? It was hard to tell. "Your rights," he repeated, rolling the words in his mouth like they were a joke. "You think you know how this works, huh?" A slow dread coiled in my gut. This wasn't law enforcement. This wasn't even a misunderstanding. This was something else. "Wallet." "Now," Stocky ordered, his voice sharp. I froze. The demand was sudden, too direct, too aggressive. "What?" I asked, playing dumb. Squarejaw sighed, like he was already bored. "You heard him," he said. "Hand it over. We need to verify your identity." Bullshit. They weren't trying to verify anything. They were testing me, seeing how much power they could take before I pushed back. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. This wasn't about questioning me. It wasn't about law enforcement at all. This was a scam. They were con men, predators, and I was standing in their trap. I needed to think fast. I made a show of patting my pockets. "Oh, I must have left it in my car," I said casually. "I can grab it real quick." I turned slightly, angling my body toward the sidewalk, toward escape. A hand clamped down on my arm. I tensed. Stocky's grip was firm, just shy of painful. "Not so fast," he said. Every muscle in my body screamed at me to react, to rip my arm away, to shove him back, to run. But I forced myself to stay still. Because if I escalated this too fast, I wasn't sure how far they were willing to go. Squarejaw exhaled sharply, as if I was testing his patience. "Let's not make this difficult," he said, his voice quieter now, more deliberate. "Give us the wallet and we'll be out of your hair." The way he said it made my blood run cold. "We'll be out of your hair. Not we'll finish the questioning, or you'll be free to go." That was transactional language. That was someone promising to leave if they got what they wanted, which meant if. I gave them my wallet. What next? Would they just take my cash and let me go, or would they see it as a green light to push for more? My gut screamed the answer, this wouldn't end with my wallet. I needed to shift the power dynamic, fast. So I did something risky. I narrowed my eyes, tilting my head as if I had just pieced something together. "Wait," I said slowly, watching their faces carefully. "You're not real cops, are you?" Stocky's grip on my arm tightened, his fingers digging in just enough to remind me that he was in control. "Excuse me?" he said, his tone flat. Held my ground. "If you were, you wouldn't be so scared of me verifying you." A beat of silence, a flicker of something in Squarejaw's expression. Annoyance? Doubt? Then he smiled, but this time there was no pretense of friendliness. "We're the ones asking the questions," he said, his voice almost amused now. And that's when I knew. I wasn't just in trouble, I was in serious trouble. My pulse pounded in my ears, but I forced my face to stay neutral. Panic wouldn't help me here. If these guys sensed fear, they'd press harder. Instead, I did what any cornered animal does. I adapted. I exhaled sharply, like I was frustrated but resigned. "Fine," I muttered. "You need my wallet? Let me check my pockets again." Stocky's grip loosened slightly. He thought he had won. Good. Let him think that. Moving slowly, I reached into my jacket pocket. Not for my wallet, but for my phone. With one quick motion, I tapped the screen 3 times, activating my camera. The phone vibrated faintly, signaling the recording had begun. I kept it low, out of sight, but angled just enough to capture their faces, their uniforms, everything. That felt off. I forced a nervous chuckle. "You guys are intense," I said, trying to keep my tone light. "You always roll up on people like this?" Squarejaw didn't take the bait. Stopped stalling, but Stocky hesitated. It was barely noticeable, a flicker of discomfort in his eyes, a slight shift in his stance. He wasn't as confident as his partner. Maybe he wasn't fully on board with whatever this was. Interesting. I decided to push. "You look familiar," I said, squinting at him. "Have we met before?" Stocky tensed, just for a second. Bingo. His reaction told me everything I needed to know. He wasn't just some nameless con artist. He had a past, one he clearly didn't want me digging into. I filed that away for later. For now, I needed more proof. Casually, I glanced down at their belts again, pretending to be annoyed. "At least let me see a badge up close," I said. "You guys are acting all official, but I can barely read those things," Squarejaw scoffed. "You don't need to read it, you need to listen." That answer alone told me what I already suspected. Those badges wouldn't hold up under scrutiny. I needed to get out of here, but not before I had enough evidence to nail them. I shifted slightly, turning just enough to catch the SUV in my phone's frame. No markings, no lights, nothing identifying it as law enforcement. I needed more. I kept playing along. "Look, I get it. You're doing your job," I said, slipping my phone back into my pocket while keeping the camera rolling. "But I've got places to be. So if we're done here..." Squarejaw took a step forward, closing the space between us again. "We're not done." I stiffened. He was losing patience. That meant I was running out of time. Then, movement. Stocky glanced around, shifting his weight like he was nervous. His fingers twitched near his belt, but not toward a weapon, toward something else. His phone. Was he about to call someone? Text? Or, wait, was he waiting for a call? My stomach tightened. Was someone else involved in this? I had what I needed. Faces, voices, badges, uniforms, the unmarked SUV. Now I had to get out without setting them off. I nodded quickly, playing my final card. Okay, I said. "You win. I'll cooperate." Squarejaw smirked, satisfied. Smart choice. But Stocky looked almost relieved, like he wanted this to end. That was my opening. I inhaled slowly, mentally mapping out my next move. If I played this right, I wasn't just getting away, I was bringing them down. I walked away from that encounter with my heart still hammering in my chest, but my mind was sharper than ever. I had their faces, their voices, their fake badges, all caught on video. Now I just needed to know who they really were. I slipped into my car and locked the doors, forcing myself to breathe. My hands were still shaking as I pulled out my phone and scrolled through the footage, clear as day. Squarejaw and Stocky, standing there in their knockoff uniforms, barking orders like they owned the street. The way they dodged my questions, the way they tried to intimidate me, it was all there. Proof. But proof of what exactly? I had a gut feeling this wasn't just a couple of guys trying to scam a quick buck. This was bigger. I needed answers. Pulled up a search engine and typed in local police impersonators arrested. Hundreds of results. Scammers, con artists, criminals who used fake badges to rob, kidnap, or worse. But none of them matched these guys. I frowned. Maybe I was going about this the wrong way. I opened the video again and took a screenshot of Squarejaw's face. Then one of Stocky's facial recognition. It wasn't perfect, but there were online tools that could match images to publicly available records. I uploaded their pictures and let the algorithm do its thing. The results came in fast, and what I saw made my stomach drop. Squarejaw had a name, Darren Cole, and a record. He wasn't just a con artist. He was a wanted fugitive, armed robbery, assault, even a previous charge for impersonating an officer. But that wasn't the worst part. Stocky? Real name, Ryan Tate, a former cop. I exhaled, sharply, gripping my phone tighter. A former cop working with a known criminal? That meant one of two things. Either he'd fallen in with the wrong crowd, or he was dirty long before he lost his badge. I scrolled through his case history. Fired 3 years ago for misconduct. No details listed, just vague phrasing about excessive force and compromising investigations. So that's why he hesitated. He still had cop instincts. Maybe even guilt, but he was in too deep. My heart pounded as I switched apps and dialed the local precinct. The phone rang once, twice. Then, "Police department, what's your emergency?" I swallowed hard, keeping my voice steady. I think I just ran into 2 guys impersonating officers, and I have proof. There was a pause. Then the dispatcher's tone shifted, sharper now. "Where are you right now?" I hesitated. "In my car, away from them." "Why?" A beat of silence. Then, "Sir, stay put. I'm sending a unit your way." Something in her voice made my blood run cold. She wasn't treating this like a simple report. She was treating it like an active threat. I tightened my grip on the wheel, staring at my reflection in the rearview mirror. I wasn't just dealing with con men, I had just exposed something dangerous. And if these guys knew I was onto them, I might not be safe anymore. My mind was racing. If the police dispatcher treated this like an active threat, that meant one thing. These guys were dangerous. I couldn't afford to confront them head on. That would be playing into their hands. No, I needed to outsmart them. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to think. How do you take down con men, expose them? People like Squarejaw and Stocky thrived on deception. They counted on the fact that people wouldn't question them. If I stripped away their illusion of authority, they had nothing. And I knew exactly how to do it. I pulled up my phone and opened a local community crime watch group on social media. These kinds of groups were filled with concerned citizens, people who paid attention. I quickly typed out a post. Warning, fake cops in the area. Just had a run-in with 2 men posing as officers near Oak Ridge Street. No marked car, no name tags, and fake-looking badges. They tried to intimidate me into handing over my wallet. Be careful! Attaching photos from my video. I hit post and watched it take off like wildfire. Within minutes, comments poured in. I saw them near the shopping plaza last week. They stopped my nephew, said he was acting suspicious, but never gave a reason. We need to report this. Exactly what I wanted. If Squarejaw and Stocky were still in the area, they'd have no idea that suddenly half the town was watching for them. I dialed the police station directly this time. No more dispatchers. I needed someone who could act fast. "This is Officer Reynolds," a firm voice answered. I wasted no time. "I know where the fake cops are, and I can get them to stay put long enough for you to catch them." A pause. Then, "Go on." I explained everything. Who they were, how they operated, and most importantly, how I could get them to walk straight into an ambush. The officer listened carefully. "We've been trying to track these guys for weeks," he admitted. "They keep moving before we can pin them down. Not this time." I glanced at the community post again. Someone had just commented that the 2 men were still in the area. Perfect. "I'm going to make them come to me," I said. "Just be ready." I needed a way to get Squarejaw and Stocky right where I wanted them. So I made the call. I dialed the number I'd seen Stocky glancing at earlier, betting on my gut that it was his burner phone. He picked up immediately. "Yeah?" I kept my voice controlled. I changed my mind. A pause. Then, "Who is this?" "The guy you stopped earlier." I exhaled like I was nervous. I panicked. "I want to make things right. Where can I meet you?" Silence. Then Squarejaw's voice came on. Smart choice. He gave me an address, a quiet parking lot behind an abandoned strip mall. Exactly the kind of place criminals feel comfortable. I smiled. See you soon. I arrived 10 minutes later, only I wasn't alone. The police were already in position, plainclothes officers in unmarked vehicles waiting for my signal. I pulled in and stepped out of my car. A few seconds later, the black SUV rolled up. Square Jaw and Stocky got out, looking smug. "Glad you came to your senses," Square Jaw said. I smirked. "Yeah, me too." Then I nodded, just once, toward the alley. Before they could react, red and blue lights flooded the parking lot. Real officers, real badges, real authority. Stocky's face went pale. Square Jaw stiffened, fists clenching. On the ground, now, was over. I had played the game better than they did. For a split second, everything was still. Square Jaw and Stocky stood frozen as the red and blue lights cut through the darkness, flashing off their fake badges like a cruel joke. The air was thick with tension, the quiet before a storm. Then, chaos. On the ground. An officer barked through a megaphone. Stocky reacted first. Badly. He bolted. I barely had time to process it before he was already moving, sprinting toward the alley behind the strip mall. His heavy boots pounded against the pavement, breath ragged as he ran for his life. "He's running!" one of the officers shouted. 2 cops peeled off after him, their radios crackling as they called for backup. Square Jaw, though. He didn't run. He did something worse. Instead of surrendering, he lunged. Straight at me. I barely had time to react before his hand snatched my collar, yanking me forward. "This is your fault," he snarled, his grip iron tight. His breath was hot against my face, his fingers twisting into my shirt like he wanted to crush me with his bare hands. Panic flared in my chest. My instincts screamed, "Move!" Before I could, the cops were on him, a blur of motion. 3 officers tackled Square Jaw to the ground in a brutal, practiced maneuver. He hit the pavement hard, a strangled yell escaping his throat as his arms were wrenched behind his back. "Let me go!" he roared, thrashing like a wild animal. His face was red with rage, veins bulging in his neck as he fought against the inevitable, but he had lost. The cold click of handcuffs echoed in the night. And just like that, it was over. The officers dragged Square Jaw to his feet. His chest rose and fell in furious gasps, his muscles still tensed like he was debating one last stupid fight. But then, something shifted. His gaze flicked past me, toward the alley, toward where Stocky had run. A slow, bitter laugh escaped his lips. "He left me," he muttered. "That son of a cop shoved him toward a squad car, cutting him off." "Yeah? Welcome to real law enforcement, buddy. No honor among thieves." That's when I heard the commotion from the alley. "Let go! I didn't have a choice." Stocky. The officers had him pinned against the hood of a patrol car. Unlike Square Jaw, he wasn't fighting. He looked defeated. His eyes darted wildly, sweat dripping from his forehead as he struggled for words. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," he stammered. I didn't sign up for this," one of the cops scoffed. "Didn't sign up for what, Ryan?" Stocky's breath hitched. Then, for the first time, his eyes locked onto mine. And I saw it. Regret. His shoulders sagged. His voice dropped to a whisper. "He made me do it." I stiffened. Square Jaw, Darren Cole. The mastermind. The real predator. I glanced toward the squad car where he sat, now eerily calm, his lips curled into the faintest smirk, and suddenly, I knew. This wasn't over. A week had passed since that night, but I still wasn't sleeping right. I kept replaying it in my head. The flashing lights, the struggle, the look in Stocky's eyes when he whispered, "He made me do it." Darren Cole, the man I knew as Square Jaw, had been booked on multiple charges: impersonating an officer, attempted robbery, assault, resisting arrest. The list went on. Turns out he'd pulled this scam before, hopping from town to town, vanishing just before police could catch him. This time he wasn't so lucky. Ryan, Tate, Stocky had flipped. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was self-preservation. But he had spilled everything. How Darren recruited him. How they picked targets. how they used fear to get what they wanted, but there was one thing he wouldn't or couldn't explain. We weren't the only ones. That's what he had said, right before the detectives pulled him into an interrogation room. I had asked the officers what he meant. They wouldn't say. Or maybe they didn't know. Last night, I got a notification from the same Crime Watch group I had used to expose them. A woman had posted about a traffic stop gone wrong. An unmarked black SUV. No name tags. Fake-looking badges. Different town. Same story. My stomach turned as I read the comments. I thought I had shut them down. But maybe I had only just scratched the surface. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, share it with friends, and subscribe for more awesome content. Don't forget to tap the bell icon to stay updated. And let me know in the comments, where are you watching from? Your support means the world.